Welcome back. Now, on this specific video, I want to talk about how the still small voice can be expressed. That is to say, some of the identification of this still small voice. Because the question would be, what is the still small voice or inner self? How does that work? One of the most common way is you have this impression on your heart about doing something or um, avoiding something. You have this gentle, simple impression on your heart. I give an example. Um, I was driving past last week by the King Kahumanu Highway. I was actually going for a recording series, and on the way, I drove past someone sitting by the roadside, and for some reason, I just had this impression because I saw the back of this person open and bare, no dress on. Um, I just, I don't know how to explain it, but this impression on my heart to give away my shirt. I had an extra shirt in the car. So when I go for my recording, I have extra uh, shirt to put on. And so I look in my mirror, the my whole back was cleared. So I back up to this person and I greeted in the turn and I was giving my shirt and I had same thing about adding some cash. I checked my wallet. I had few $1. I don't carry cash around, so I gave that, and I clearly look at the person and said, whatever you are going through, do not allow this to define who you are. I want to assure you that Jesus is able to take you through this, and since you're alive, it's an indication that God has a plan for your future. Never, ever quit or look down on yourself because of what is happening. And as I spoke those words, I had this just it was not I prepare a speech or a statement, but I can tell this is oozing out of my heart from that response of this sense. And then I said, "Can I pray for you?" And the person said, "Yes." So I just stretched forth my hand in the car and I prayed. I looked through my mirror, still no car coming. And and then prayed and I blessed and I drove off. Immediately I drove off, I had this sense of uh, sense to pray more. So I pray more for this person, intercede on their behalf, ask God to just protect and guide and lead. And immediately I did that. I have this almost like that impression was lifted up my heart. So that's one sense. You can have this impression on your heart that says, give this to that person. And the first argument could be, this I don't know this person, and I'm actually driving. There could be a car coming behind me, um, and but because I'm learning and walking through this, and for years, and I've seen God does things. Notice I was aware that was not me impressing on my mind. I was aware that was God speaking to me. Now, the other one could be a thought in your mind. That's a still small voice. A thought that go through your mind. And suddenly, out of nowhere, these thoughts go through your mind. Go and do this. Or stand up and leave this place. And you're thinking, but why? And then you realize a few seconds later that actually, who am I actually arguing with? Who am I talking to? And suddenly the thought faintly leaves your mind. Another one could be a sort of a heaviness. Some people have experienced this heaviness where they start weeping and they can't tell why they are weeping. And to some who have grown to understand this is God speaking to them, they start begin to pray instead of just allow themselves weep. They just start praying and said, God, let your will be done. Some, I don't know what to pray for, how to pray, but I can't stop the tears. So they've learned to say, I'm just going to pray, Lord, let your will be done. Father, speak to me, guide me, clarify, explain this to me. And to some, as you begin to pray, you realize clarity is given to you, right? The understanding of what um, that emotions was coming from beginning to surface itself. And something it could even surface with a name or surface with a picture or surface with an understanding of you have to pray for this. And so there's that um, impression on your heart. Uh, some could just be this, not a heaviness, but um, a sense of joy and laughter, and you're wondering like, why am I suddenly I just feel like buoyant and fired up and excited. What's going on? And that's the joy of the Lord. And the Lord is speaking to you and pouring His love and joy over you, perhaps to celebrate you, to lift you up from a situation, or to prepare your heart to be strong because something is coming ahead. And many times I've gone through this, and I know that this is even more so common as you meet and talk with believers across the globe, where they've had this sense of the joy pouring on them, and they just go into gratitude, into worship, into thanksgiving. And after this incredible time of joy and thanksgiving and worship before God, and perhaps they are on their way driving to work, or they are on their way doing something, and suddenly they get this news. And that news would have been so devastating to them. And maybe this resonates as I'm speaking to you, but they can connect that because of that joy filled encounter they had. That news was um, that was supposedly able to crush them was suddenly diffused in a way that sometimes unable to explain um, how to respond, and just being content and be able to walk people through. I remember when my elder brother passed away. Um, it was one of the greatest shock I ever experienced in my mind, in my heart, in my body, in my life. Um, but I quite remember that few days, that the week prior to his death, I was stuck in another country because I was on my way to speak uh, due to, I can mention the country. I was in the Philippines. Um, I had just finished speaking at the leadership uh, conference there in the island of Palawan, and I flew to Manila to get a visa and fly to a separate country. I already had my no, I actually had my flight booked and everything set, and assumably or presumably to get the visa at the port of entry. But at the airport, I was stopped from entering the plane, and I was told you need to actually go to the embassy and get a visa. That was so shocking. I've never been stopped. I flew to several countries across the world. I've never been stopped from entering the plane. I've seen that happen to people, but I've never been stopped. But it was quite um, a shocking, shaking. I don't know what to say. So from that point, I couldn't even speak. I just kept listening. They say you don't need. So I would just ask leading question. You mean I can say yeah? Um, you mean this is? Is it because of my transit or because of the country? So many questions I had to ask these officers. But then the next few days, I actually went to the embassy the following day. So I went and slept in a hotel. The following day, I went to the embassy there in Manila, and I, I was walked through different scenario, and but for some reason, the embassy has been moved. The visa process is going to take so long. I just sent my family home that morning, the previous day in the morning. I sent them to Holland because I was going for this 1 week teaching, and then we'll meet them over in Holland. It was most chaotic and shocking experience that I went through in my heart, and this led me to pray and just ask God for clarity, and I wasn't sure what was going on. Few days later, I felt very clearly that God was putting on my heart that I was not supposed to go. So even though I was told to come back the next day, I sent an email to this other country. I was expected to start speaking that week. So I had to send them an email to the school director and said, I at this point, this is the situation. I've been updating them, but right now this is the current situation. And from this information and what I'm experiencing right now, I couldn't say God said to me this, but again, that impression of my heart. I said, at this, I will want to say, I would like to encourage you to go ahead with the teaching of this week and do not put so much as hope to expect my arrival as of now. And when I sent that email, I actually left. I went to the hotel and just relaxed. I went and visited some of our family in the mission there. I spent time with them, and then got connected with another friend and went to see what they were doing as mission work there. There was this sudden switch from my push to have this visa to go. I just completely switched. The following day, I got a phone call from them saying it wasn't possible because that department has been moved. It would take weeks and weeks, and that for me was just the confirmation I needed for that. And as a result, I flew to Holland, having gone through this, that led me to pray, and then at the end of which I get to experience the mission work of our mission family in that country. That shifted my perspective. Actually, during that trip, God spoke to me about how to partner with them for an area of ministry that they were walking through. And so I came out of this experience, and then few days after getting to Holland, I think a day or two, the first news was I heard he was at the hospital. I said, that's it's never in the hospital. So I called him. I spoke with him on the phone. I said, what is going on? We chatted. It didn't sound like desperate and serious. And then I heard the next day that he tried to leave the hospital. That he was fine, but then it got more serious. So he went back to the hospital. I had asked that he been transferred to a better hospital system, and that was done. And then 2 days later, that was on a Thursday, I got this news that he has passed away. I was calling my younger ones on the phone to say, explain this to me. Um, I couldn't tell my wife that whole night. I had to tell her the next day. It was quite a lot, but this shocking encounter was coming on top of a previous shock of being taken out of a check-in gate and being asked to come back for a visa, and being led to say give up that trip, and now find new joy and excitement because of what God was doing. So God, still small voice, can connect with our lives and circumstances, and you can have that impression. And perhaps as I'm sharing this story, you can already connect to some of the experiences you've gone through in life, and I can say this to you. And you're going to find out more when we talk about God speaking through circumstances, is that some of those impressions, some of those emotional shift that have happened in your heart, you are going to identify how God speaks to you and actually use those to prepare you, to protect you, and actually use that to build up your faith and get your heart ready for the impact that is about to come. It goes further to explain how loving, how gracious, and how merciful our God is. Thank you.